Gotta turn this off.
I'll go see how you look, okay?
All right. My audio, click. Good morning.
Sam's. I see.
All right.
Did you let him in?
I admitted everybody. Oh.
You're not letting us in yet.
I'm admitting people.
All right, here we go. I got you.
Jan, can you hear me?
I don't have my, yes, I can.
Stan, can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you, Tom.
Okay, David, can you
Morning.
hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, very good, very good. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Did you have to shovel snow today?
No,
No?
no, but it's frosted out here.
Yeah, I received a picture from a neighbor who's closing her cottage right below Mackinac Island.
Mhm.
They had a little dusting yesterday morning. Frightful.
Yeah,
Wow.
Okay, let's see. Okay. David, do you plan on talking? Is that your game plan?
yeah, and I'm going to share my screen. I have a PowerPoint.
Ooh, okay.
Is that
I've
possible?
never done that with SABR's link up, so
Well, we could try it. If it doesn't work, that's okay.
okay, all right. Janet? All right, okay.
Can I share my screen now to see if it works?
Sure. All right. So,
Host disabled participant screen sharing. That must be something you have to do, or is it maybe SABR doesn't let you do it?
okay, multiple, all right. Okay, files. All right, would that be in Microsoft?
Probably.
Is that Microsoft OneDrive or Microsoft SharePoint?
Oh goodness, I don't know.
All right, which one do you want to try?
SharePoint.
SharePoint? Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'm
we
going to
can
try
hear
SharePoint.
Okay. Oh, look at that. Select a window or an active. Okay, just a sec. I think this might work. Let me get my, let me
Just go back.
put down a few screens here.
Oh, I get out of that.
Excellent. I don't know how to do it. You might be able to.
All right, here we go. Share screen.
Ooh, hey.
There we go.
Did it.
Got a picture.
Yep.
Okay, all righty. Oh, okay. Oh, well, that was a big relief.
Technology is great when it works.
Oh,
Yeah.
man. Yeah. David, one question.
Yeah.
Cicotte or Cicotte?
Cicotte.
Okay, Cicotte. All right.
That's one thing I talk about here.
Okay, good, because that was one of my first questions.
Okay.
All righty. Okay, okay, we've got, all right, okay. Let's see. How long do you plan to talk, David?
Might be 20 to 25 minutes.
Okay, and you are receptive to some questions
Oh,
then
sure.
afterwards?
Sure.
Okay, very good, very good. All right. another minute or two and we can get started.
Okay.
All right, just, I guess, easing the tensions. Are you related to Eddie Cicotte by any chance?
Just a little bit. I'm his third cousin, 3 times removed. Yes.
All right, on your father's side or mother's side?
My mother's side.
Mother's side,
They
yeah.
were all French Canadians from Detroit, so
Yeah.
I'm rather distantly related.
Ooh, ooh. How long have you known that?
I only found it out toward the end of my research, because Eddie's mother's name, I thought I'd seen that in our family tree. So my brother, who's the family genealogist, went through the records, and one of my great grandfathers and Eddie were third cousins. I don't
Wow,
think they would have ever met, but who knows?
Yeah.
That's cool.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, cool. Okay. Janet Marie? All right. Let's see here. Okay, admit somebody else. Okay, all right,
Did you figure that?
all right, okay. All righty.
What do you mean?
I'm trying to see who else is here. I mean,
Go
if,
down to participants.
yeah, I have to, okay, see if anybody else is in the waiting room. Okay,
You can start.
all right, okay. I've got a minute or two after 9, so if you don't mind, let's see here, just a little introduction. Good morning, everyone.
Morning, John.
Good morning. This is the SABR Toledo and Sanger Library Baseball Book Club. And today we have as special guest, David Fleitz. He lives in Michigan. He's a SABR member and author of numerous baseball books, including the one that you see on the screen. And David is going to talk to us about Eddie Cicotte, and then he'll be open for some questions. So if you want to relay a question, you can put it in the chat and I can relay that to David, or at the end, you can ask your question. And if you would like to mute yourself during David's presentation, then we won't hear the dog barking or telephone or outside noise. Other than that, welcome everyone, and I'll turn it over to David. Good morning, David.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm fine. Glad
Okay,
you
great.
could make it today.
Okay, well, thank you. Well, this is my 10th book for McFarland, and it's called Eddie Cicotte, The Life and Career of the Banned Black Sox Pitcher. And one thing I want to make straight right from the beginning, his name is pronounced Cicotte. In Field of Dreams, they call him Cicotte. His teammates would call him everything, every pronunciation but the right one, just to play with him. But that's always been a big deal. But he gave many, many interviews all through his life where he said his name is Cicotte. So that's where we're going to start from. Now, why does he deserve a bio? Well, Eddie is one of the tragic figures of baseball. He was one of the 8 players with Shoeless Joe Jackson who was banned from baseball for his participation in the Black Sox scandal in 1919. He was a star pitcher of the White Sox. He was a 29-game winner in 1919 and totally collapsed in the World Series. And it came out a year later that Eddie had taken $10,000 to purposely lose the series. When that came out, and Eddie was the first player to confess, actually, when that came out, he wound up getting banned from baseball for the rest of his life, and he was a pariah in baseball, even though he had been such a popular player and a star, and he basically threw it all away for $10,000. So now, how did I get interested in Eddie? Well, in 2001, I wrote a book about Shoeless Joe Jackson, which of course dealt with the Black Sox scandal. So Eddie Cicotte was one of the key figures of the Black Sox scandal. And I was looking at a website one day, a blog or whatever, and somebody just offhandedly mentioned that Eddie's story was probably more interesting than Jackson's. So I started doing a lot of research on Eddie. And one thing that I found out toward the very end of almost when I was done writing the book is that I'm related to him. Eddie's family were French Canadians who settled in Detroit. My mother's family were French Canadians who settled in Detroit. It turns out one of my great grandfathers and Eddie were third cousins. I am Eddie Cicotte's third cousin, 3 times removed. So that was an added bonus, sort of. So now, who was he? He was born in 1884 in Springwells, which is now a part of Detroit. He was the youngest of 8 children. His father died of alcohol poisoning when he was 10 years old.
You have to go to,
And
he's doing it privately, so that you can just answer it.
so are we okay there?
Yes, fine.
Oh, great, okay. So his father died when he was 10. At 12, he quit school to go to work in a box factory. Well, he loved being at Michigan and Trumbull. The Detroit Tigers of the Western League were playing there. So he would get in by carrying players' equipment in with him, and that's how he would gain admission. In 1900, the Western League became the American League. In 1901, the American League became a major league, and the Tigers were in the major league. So at 17, Eddie decided that he was going to be a ball player. Now, Eddie's only 5 feet 8.5 inches tall. He weighed about 120 pounds at the time. So he has a very mediocre fastball. So he learned to throw the spitter, which was all the rage in baseball at the time. So he pitches semi-pro and amateur. He joins a team in Sault Ste. Marie in 1904. The Detroit Free Press said that his record was 38-4 for Sault Ste. Marie. That earned him the notice of the Detroit Tigers. The Tigers invite him to their spring training in 1905, and they assign him to their farm team in Augusta, Georgia. He's a teammate of Ty Cobb in Augusta, Georgia, and late in 1905, both Eddie and Cobb were bought by the Tigers. Eddie pitched 3 games, and then the Tigers sent him to Indianapolis for 1906. That's where he developed and perhaps invented the knuckleball. He became known as Knuckles Cicotte. Nobody had seen this pitch before. Eddie at least was the man who developed it. He may have been the man who invented it. He actually threw it with his knuckles. Very few people do that today, but Eddie actually threw it with his knuckles. So he became Knuckles Cicotte, and after a good year in 1907, the Boston Red Sox buy him. So he plays for Boston from 1909 to 1912. So, and he has a very up and down career in Boston. Here he is in Boston. For one thing, Eddie was a Midwesterner. He didn't like the East Coast. Another thing, he's very up and down. And another one of Eddie's problems was he did not like conditioning. He was overweight. He weighed about 180 at the time on 5 feet 8 inches. He got a reputation as a pitcher who ran out of gas in the later innings. He had a lot of clashes with management. And in mid-1912, they sell him to the Chicago White Sox. Well, in Chicago, he blossomed. He enjoyed Chicago. Now, Chicago was a team on the rise, and one of the big factors now he's already 28 years old. He's getting old for a pitcher. But one of the big factors was he had a catcher named Ray Schalk. Ray Schalk is in the Hall of Fame. Schalk was a little guy, and he was so quick and so nimble that he could catch Eddie's spitballs and knuckleballs before they rolled to the backstop. Ray Schalk was a huge reason that Eddie became a star. Now this picture, this is one of my favorite pictures of Eddie. This is the White Sox pitching staff in 1913. And they're all tall guys except one. The guy on the right is Red Faber. The guy on the very left is Ed Walsh. Who's Ed? Which one's Eddie? The really little guy who's half a head shorter than everyone. So that's why he needed all the trick pitches to succeed. He wasn't going to succeed on his fastball. He needed trick pitches and he needed control. His biggest trick pitch, though, the one that really made him a star, was the shine ball. Eddie and other pitchers had figured out that if you rough up one side of the ball, you can make it sail or dip or dart or dive. Well, the shine ball is one side is rough and then you polish the other side so smooth that it's like a billiard ball, and that makes the ball, the surface of the ball, uneven, and that would sail and dive and everything else. Now, other batters hated it, but the shine ball is what really made Eddie a star. Here's a picture of him warming up in 1917. Look at his the right side, on his right side. Look at the pants there, how dirty that is. That's where he rubs up the ball. The batters hated it. The batters complained about it. The league president didn't like it, but he got away with it until it was banned in 1920. So he won 15 games in 1916. In 1917, he becomes the star pitcher. He wins 28 games and leads the White Sox to the pennant. The White Sox won the World Series in 1917. Now, 1918 was a down year because of the war. But in 1919, Eddie was the ace again. And in 1919, he won 29 games and the White Sox pretty much coasted to the pennant. Now here's Eddie in color. If you want to see what he looks like in color, there he is. So now by 1919, Eddie's 35 years old and his career is not going to last that much longer. He's got another problem. There are 12 people living in his house in Detroit. He and his wife and his 3 kids and his brother and his kids were there, and her parents were there. They had 12 people living in their house. And Eddie bought a farm out in Farmington, a little west of Detroit. That farm had a $4,000 mortgage on it. And Eddie was earning $8,000 a year. He was the second highest paid pitcher in the American League. But he had money problems and he knew his career was not going to last a whole lot longer. So why did he get involved in the Black Sox scandal? Well, probably because he needed the money. And baseball gambling was such a huge feature of the game at the time. I make a point in my book that the right field stands in Fenway Park in Boston was where all the gamblers sat. It was like the cast of Guys and Dolls sitting out there, all the Sky Mastersons and Nathan Detroits, passing money back and forth, making bets. And no one had done too much about it. So gamblers and bookies mixed with players very, very easily. And it was very easy for a bookie or a gambler to slip a player a few $100s to lose a game, botch a rundown, drop a fly ball, whatever. And so this was a huge feature of baseball at the time. Eddie had played in Boston, but Boston was the hub of the baseball gambling world. And this bookie named Sport Sullivan approached the first baseman Chick Gandil and Eddie with a proposition of throwing the World Series. So that's where the Black Sox scandal started. Another thing was that perhaps Eddie got involved in it because he thought it was easy money, and games have been thrown before. There were rumors about the 1912, 1914, and 1918 World Series not being played on the square. They all involved Boston teams. So, well, like I said, Eddie was a very popular player. This is him with Babe Ruth before a game at Comiskey Park in August of 1920. He and Babe were talking. Eddie was very proud of the fact that Babe Ruth never hit a home run off him. So the 1919 World Series starts. Eddie tells the bookies he wants $10,000 in cash before he throws a pitch. The night before the first game, Eddie finds 10 $1,000 bills under his pillow. And he had instructions to give as a signal that the fix was on to hit the first batter. He hit the first batter with his second pitch. So in game one, Eddie gets through the first 3 innings, but in the fourth, the Reds scored 5 times. He totally lost it in the 4th inning. The Reds scored 5 times to take a 6-1 lead. They won the game 9-1. Eddie pitched only 3 2/3 innings and allowed 7 hits and 6 earned runs. It was totally out of character for him to have that total collapse. Now it's a best of 9 series, not a best of 7 like they have now. Game 2, the White Sox lost. Game 3, they won. Game 4, it's Eddie's turn again. Eddie gets through the first 4 innings, but in the 5th, he totally collapses. And this is what people look back on to say, oh yeah, he was involved. He was part of it. The play-by-play in the 5th, he retires Ed Rausch on a tap in front of the plate. Pat Duncan hits a liner off of Eddie's glove, and Eddie throws it past first base, and Duncan winds up on second. Larry Kopf then hit a single to left. Shoeless Joe Jackson throws a strike to the plate. Eddie is not backing up the catcher. Eddie gets in front of the throw and deflects it. It bounces off his glove, rolls away for an error, and 2 runs score. So the next batter hits a pop fly to left that Joe Jackson misplayed. He staggered around under it. It hits his glove and falls to the ground. And that gives the Reds another run. So those 2 bad fielding plays, the bad throw and and trying to intercept the throw from left field, that was really egregious. And that's when people said, okay, we know something's going on now. The Reds, the White Sox lose game 5, they win game 6. The players are angry because they're not getting the money that they've been promised. So Eddie goes out and he's brilliant in game 7 and he wins game 7. But then the White Sox lose game 8 and they lose the World Series. So now there isn't any proof of anything though. So the White Sox, except for Chick Gandil, come back in 1920. All the other 7 players who were involved come back. Now the team has 2 cliques that just aren't talking to each other at all. There are 2 cliques who hated each other. But Eddie wins 21 games in 1920. And in early September or late August, the White Sox have a 3.5 game lead over Cleveland in the pennant race. But then they totally and completely collapsed and lost 7 in a row. And it looked like the players are throwing games again. Well, in September 1920, a grand jury gets impaneled in Chicago to look at baseball gambling. And of course, they focus on the 1919 World Series. And by mid-September, Eddie and the other players had been named in the papers as suspects. So in late September, I believe September 28th, Eddie Cicotte goes in front of the grand jury and he confesses his role in the scandal, confessed that he received $10,000 to blow the World Series. And Eddie is the one who confessed first, and Eddie is the one who blew the scandal open. So they're all immediately suspended. And of course, it makes a huge splash in the newspapers. This is the New York Times, September 29th, 1920, that 8 Chicago players are indicted. And of course, they're suspended immediately. The White Sox lose the pennant to Cleveland by only 2 games. And Eddie's career is now over. There was a trial the next year. In June of 1921, the players went on trial for fraud and conspiracy, but the players are all acquitted. And this is the scene after, this is what the Sporting News printed on October 7th, 1920. Fix these faces in your memory. The 8 players who were charged with taking money to throw the World Series. But they were all acquitted at trial, fortunately. But the judge ruled that they had to, the prosecution had to rule that throwing the games was not enough. They had to do it with the intent to defraud the public or hurt the White Sox business. But the jury decided to acquit all of them. Here is Eddie. Eddie's the one in the center with the bow tie, shaking hands with the jurors right after the acquittal. The guy next to him here is Happy Felsch. The guy in the hat here is Buck Weaver. This is a huge scene. This is Joe Jackson, up, whose head is over here next to Eddie's. It was a huge riotous celebration, but the very next day, the new commissioner, Landis, expelled all 8 players from baseball for life. So what does Eddie do now? His career is over. He's 37 years old. He can't play Major League Baseball anymore. What he and some of the other Black Sox do is they form a barnstorming team. Here's Eddie with, Eddie's the guy in the sweater here. Eddie and Sweet Risberg and Happy Felsch and sometimes Joe Jackson would form a barnstorming team and go play games in little bitty towns and dirt fields and that, maybe pass the hat to be paid. It was a real come down. And of course, it's not Comiskey Park, but it is playing baseball. But after a few years, Eddie gets a little tired of it. Now here's Eddie when he was playing for the White Sox. You see that gap in his teeth? In later years, you can see that he's had his teeth fixed. Well, he had his teeth fixed because Sweet Risberg punched him in the face one day and knocked 2 of his teeth out. They got into a dispute over money and over the direction of the barnstorming team, and they got into a fight on a street corner in Wisconsin, and Sweet Risberg punched his 2 front teeth out.
Mm.
So in later years, you can see that in pictures, Eddie's got his teeth fixed. So what does he do after he gives up baseball after a couple of years? He goes to work for the Ford Motor Company. Well, he goes to work in the service department. The service department is Henry Ford's private police force. So Eddie was part of this private police force that ruled the plants with an iron hand. We don't know how much shady behavior he was caught up in, but they were a violent crew. And Eddie worked for Ford for 20 years and retired in 1944. The only time Eddie lived in Detroit all the rest of his life, but he only set foot in Tiger Stadium once during all his retirement. Eddie was a part of the Old Time Baseball Association. Eddie is the guy on the left in the glasses. But these are all old time baseball players, like Bobby Veach was one and Davy Jones was one in this picture. Eddie was welcome there, but he only went to Tiger Stadium once. And that was opening day 1938, when they invited all the ex-players to the opening day ceremonies. That's the only time he had actually been banned from all the major league parks, but that was the only time he was ever there. So after he retired, here he is in 1944 when he retired at the age of 60. You can tell his teeth are fixed. In later years, he gave a few interviews here and there, but he liked to stay out of the public eye. When Elliot Azaroff wanted to interview him for 8 Men Out, Eddie turned him down. He said something about not wanting to live in the past. But in 1965, Joe Falls, here he is as a very, very old man greeting one of his fans. He would sign autographs for people. He'd send autographs through the mail. But in 1965, Eddie was 81 years old. Joe Falls from the Free Press came to interview him. came to his farm in Livonia where he still lived, and he raised strawberries and tomatoes and sold them at a roadside stand. And Joe Falls asked him about the scandal. And this is what Eddie told him. He said, "I admit I did wrong, but I've paid for it for the last 45 years. Sure, they asked me about being a crooked ball player, but I've become callous to it. I figure if I was crooked in baseball, they were crooked in something else. I don't know if anyone who ever went through life without making a mistake. Everyone that has ever lived has committed sins of their own. I tried to make up for it by living as clean a life as I could. I'm proud of the way I lived, and I think my family is too." So Eddie died in 1969 at the age of 84, and he's buried in Livonia. Now, would Eddie be in the Hall of Fame if he'd been honest? I think he very well might have. He had 209 wins. If he had lasted for a few more years and had, let's say, 40 more wins and 40 more losses, he would have 240, he'd be 249 and 188. His one lost record, at least, would be very similar to that of Jack Morris, who is in the Hall of Fame. There are pitchers in the Hall of Fame who weren't as good as Eddie Cicotte. So that was the tragedy of Eddie Cicotte. He, for $10,000, he threw away his career and his reputation, and that's why I found his story interesting. So that's the story of Eddie Cicotte.
Okay, all right. Okay, good. We're back to our view. All right, David, your evaluation of Eddie as a person and as a ball player, has it changed since you completed the book?
Well, I don't think so. I think of Eddie the way I think of Shoeless Joe Jackson. He was a good person who made a really, 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 really bad mistake. I mean, we all make mistakes, but boy, this was a big one. and no, I don't think my opinion of him has changed at all. I'm sure he was a very nice guy. He had a lot of friends in the game, but there were people who remained his friends afterward and all. But I feel kind of sad for him.
Okay. Do you think he's been treated fairly throughout history then, since he left baseball?
Well, I think so. He isn't like Jackson. Jackson took $5,000, but he hit 375 in the series, and he hit the only home run in the series, and so on. Buck Weaver didn't take any money, though Weaver was in on the meetings, and so Weaver got banned for being in on the meetings and not saying anything. So, but Eddie was really one of the ringleaders of the thing, and he's the one who accepted $10,000 and gave a signal that the fix was on. So it was Eddie. There's never been a movement to have Eddie's suspension overturned like there has for Jackson.
All right. Annette asks, are there any characters in the movie The Natural based on Eddie?
I don't think there are in The Natural. I haven't seen that since it came out in the 80s. So I don't know. I know that the one guy played by Joe Don Baker was based on Babe Ruth, but I really don't remember Eddie being in there. In Field of Dreams, in Field of Dreams, where they call him Cicotte.
Yeah.
And in 8 Men Out, but another thing about 8 Men Out, in the book and in the movie, they make a big deal about Eddie. Eddie got involved in the scandal because he hated Charles Comiskey, he hated his low salary, et cetera, et cetera. And like I said, he was the second highest paid pitcher in the American League. I figure that he didn't do this because he hated Comiskey or anything like that. He did it because he needed the money. It seemed like 10,000 easy dollars.
Yeah. All right. Here's a statement from Bill Nolan, if you want to comment on it.
Okay.
The argument for Joe Jackson in the Hall of Fame is that he was banned from baseball for life. but he is no longer living. It's not going to happen, but it's an interesting argument.
That's true. It doesn't really do any good to unban him though after he's died. One thing that astonishes me is that this whole thing happened 100 years ago, and we're still talking about it. So
Yeah, here's a question from Stan. Any truth to the story regarding a member of Cicotte's family being threatened?
well, Cicotte's family says that Eddie was threatened. There's in 8 Men Out, they say that Lefty Williams was threatened before the 8th and final game. Well, Asanoff pretty much made that up, but Cicotte's family says that Eddie told them that both he and Lefty Williams were threatened.
Okay. In the 1919 World Series, game number 1, your comments, if Eddie had a sore arm or a poor performance.
No, I think it was just a poor performance. After the game, Eddie gave an interview where he said, well, he was kind of tired from the season, yada, yada, but he just collapsed so suddenly and so completely. And many of the players and the manager knew this right away. Ray Schalk, the catcher, knew right away that he wasn't giving his best effort.
Okay.
You can't fool them.
Yeah, you can't fool the catchers. When you were doing your research, were you able to contact any surviving relatives?
Actually, no. They seem to be very scattered and all. And in past books, I really haven't had a whole lot of luck doing that. So because this, like I said, this happened so long ago that it's very vague in people's minds now. Eddie's children, none of his children are living anymore. So no, I did not.
Okay, all right. Let's see. Was there anything that surprised you as you were doing your research, either about baseball or Chicago or about Eddie?
Well, I was surprised by the extent of the gambling, that it was so easy for gamblers and bookies would take players out to dinner and they'd listen to their complaints and they'd find out who's not getting along with the manager. They'd find out who's injured and not telling anybody. And they would just pump players for information, and the two worlds just coexisted and crossed over so easily. I think that was a big surprise for me. I'm surprised that the efforts to curtail the gambling were very weak and few and far between. That was one thing that really stood out for me.
All right. His knuckleball, do you have any information if it was a ball that danced or a ball that went to the right or to the left? Anything like that?
Well, Eddie actually threw it by resting it against his knuckles and kind of launching it to the plate, and with no spin on it at all. And batters had never seen this before. And the knuckleball is totally unpredictable. It might dip and dive, or it could do almost anything as it got to the plate. It was so successful because it was so unusual. It was like when the spitball came out and batters had never seen the spitball. Well, batters had never seen the knuckleball either. So, I mean, they called him Knuckles Cicotte for that reason.
Blake asks a question about Eddie's confession. Was it due more to his nice guy personality that made him confess?
Well, it could have, because Eddie's family, I've read interviews with Eddie's family members after he passed away, and they said that Eddie was very bothered by by the taking the money, and Eddie was a very loyal Catholic, and he actually talked to his parish priest about it during the summer of 1920. But then when when all the information started coming to light and all the accusations started appearing in the newspapers, I think Eddie was the first one who realized the jig was up. Now, what if the players had never confessed? What if Eddie hadn't gone down to the Cook County Courthouse and confessed? They just keep it a secret, and it might dribble out little by little, year after year. But Chick Gandil always believed that if Eddie hadn't opened his mouth, no one would have ever found out.
So his teammates, despite Eddie being the man who caused their demise, his teammates, the 8 players, were willing to go on barnstorming tours with him. That had to be a rough relationship then.
That had to be, because Eddie got more money than a few of them did too. So, like I said, he and Risberg got into a fist fight. And also some of the players would, Risberg and Felsch and some of the players would drink to excess. They might show up for the game in some little town in Wisconsin, you know, hungover or inebriated, and Eddie didn't like that either. So yes, they did play with it. They did play together, but it wasn't always very smooth sailing for them. It was a rough life.
Yes, yes. Do you have any idea how much money they've made, each player made during the barnstorming years?
It might have been a few $100s a month at the most. It really couldn't have been very much. They found that instead of charging admission, they would make more money by passing the hat.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you know it can't be very much money.
Yeah. Stan asked, any relationship with Eddie Goodell after the 1918 series?
Eddie Gaedel?
Yep.
Eddie Gaedel was the midget who
Correct.
batted
Correct.
for Bill Veeck.
Correct.
Oh, I don't know.
You don't know. Okay. All right. Any last questions for David?
Oh, he means Chick Gandil.
Oh, Chick Gandil. Okay. Any Chick Gandil? Any
It does not look like it, no. Gandil went to California and he played outlaw ball in California and Arizona, and it doesn't look like Gandil was involved in Eddie's life at all after the trial was over. No.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Thanks. That was from Bill. Do you know if Eddie ever asked for a reinstatement to baseball through the commissioner's office?
No. As far as I know, he never did. Weaver did and Jackson did. And Gandil actually confronted Judge Landis and asked why he'd been banned from the game. But Eddie just wanted to put it all behind him. He said, the past is in the past and I just want to leave that behind me. Probably he was embarrassed.
Judge Landis's decision to suspend them from life. What's your feeling about that? Do you think it was fair, unfair, too strong?
Well, in some cases, I think it was too strong, but one thing that it did was Landis wanted to clean up the gambling problem, and he did. He used these 8 players to do it. I would feel sorry for Buck Weaver, who didn't take any money, but he had knowledge of the scandal. I wish that they would have suspended him for 1 year, perhaps, because he actually didn't take any money. But it was a very harsh punishment. But Landis wanted to end the relationship between baseball and gambling, and in one fell swoop, that's exactly what he did.
What about Charles Comiskey? You think he was treated too lightly in this scandal?
Well, he did really underpay some of his ball players, like Jackson, like Felsch. The guys who weren't well educated, the guys who were country guys, he really did take advantage of them. But then every baseball owner probably did at the time too. Like I said, Eddie was the second highest paid pitcher in the American League. Azonoff in 8 Men Out said that Comiskey made $500,000 a year off of Eddie's arm. Well, that's ridiculous, because now we know that he wasn't making no $500,000 a year off of one player. That's
Okay,
that's hyperbole.
all right. If anybody wants to unmute themselves and ask David a question, go right ahead. While people are thinking about that, David.
I'll go.
Blake Sherry has a question.
Okay.
My question, getting back to the fact that he confessed, did he initiate that confession, or was he called in for the confession?
Well, it looks like he was called in. The every thing that I can see is that he was ready to crack. He was feeling the pressure. He wasn't sleeping well. He was he just looked like he was like the whole weight of the world is on his shoulders. And so the Comiskey and his assistants decided that if somebody was going to crack, it was going to be Eddie. So they called him in on an off day, and just build up the pressure had built up so much that Eddie just wanted it to be done with. So he spilled the beans in Comiskey's office, and then he went down to the grand jury. But yeah, they did call him in,
Okay.
rather than him going there and, totally on his own volition.
So he was never, I'm asking the question, was he ever associated with any other thrown games during part of the, I don't know, 19 season or the 1920 season? Was he ever associated with other games that were suspected to be thrown?
Well, in early September of 1920, when the White Sox lost 7 in a row, he pitched very, very badly about 4 or 5 starts in a row there.
Okay.
They really suspected him. Now, it could have been that he didn't get any money for that. The gamblers had the players at their mercy. The gamblers could have said, look, you'll throw this game or I'll go tell everything I know. So the gamblers had the players over the barrel then. So when the White Sox totally collapsed in early September 1920, there were a lot of really bad looking plays and really bad looking performances then.
Okay. By the way, I really enjoyed the profile of him as a player. I'm glad you wrote the book. It did give me a feel for like what his personality was. And, I'm probably not alone in the fact that a lot of people probably just have that kind of cold, bitter guy that got portrayed in the movie. And that's kind of our perspective of him, which wasn't really, it doesn't appear to be his real personality. So thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. Now, maybe if Eddie had talked to Elliot Asanoff, Asanoff would have, portrayed him a little differently.
Yeah. David, your perspective. I know many books have been written about the 1919 Chicago White Sox World Series and books about other ball players. They all portray him on a similar basis as a law-breaking player.
Yeah, I think so. There was one book, it was Victor Lure's The Great Baseball Mystery. And I read that when I was in high school. And he actually tries to exonerate Cicotte. The 2 really egregious errors that Eddie made in Game 4 of the series, this author says they were so egregious that they couldn't possibly have been planned. They couldn't possibly have been intentional because they were so egregious. Well, I don't really follow that line of thought anyway. But that was the first book I ever read about the Black Sox scandal.
Okay. Anything else? Anyone else have a question?
Yeah, I've got a question for Dave. $10,000 is quite a bit of money, especially in 1918, 1919. Any idea what Cicotte did with the money? Did he pay
Well,
off the farm? And
He paid off the farm. He bought animals and equipment for his farm. Yeah. He spent the money real quick.
so everything that he bought was around him day after day after day
Yes.
with the
Yeah,
with the
that's
money.
probably
So
it.
that could have entered into it too.
Yeah. It's a reminder of what
Right.
happened. Yeah.
David, thanks, Stan. How did the connection between Eddie and perhaps Henry Ford or the Henry Ford Company, how was that established? And who helped him get that job?
Well, during 1918, right after the season ended early because of World War I, Eddie went to work at Ford Motor Company as like a supervisor in a boatyard or something. So that helped establish his relationship. But Henry Ford, like I said, the service department was his private police force. And so Henry Ford got ex-boxers, ex-football players, even ex-cons to be the thugs to work in the service department and keep an iron fist on the plants. So he was hiring ex-athletes, and Eddie's a disgraced ex-ball player, so he would fit right in. Now, it could be too, now, like I said, Eddie was only 5 feet 8 inches tall, so he's not a big imposing goon or anything. But he was the director of the service department in Highland Park for the last 10 years of his career. So he would have almost certainly, kept tabs on the spy network at the plant. We don't know if he was involved in any violence or anything like that, but another thing, he managed a company baseball team. So the service department and Henry Ford might have been using Eddie for his popularity, because he was still very popular around Detroit. They might have been just using him for his popularity rather than his abilities at beating up people, which is why he hired a lot of the other members of the service department.
Okay, all right, well, thank you. All right, any last questions before we end this session? Okay, well, David, let's see. Bill Nolan says, thanks for an excellent presentation. I'm sure that many will watch the recording of it after it's posted. Some of our West Coast members likely found the early morning time to be inconvenient.
Okay.
Well said. Well, David, thank you very much for taking the time and presenting your version of Eddie Cicotte and his connection with Major League Baseball and the Ford Motor Company. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you,
Quick
David.
question here. Where's the book available at, Dave?
It's on Amazon. It's at the
Okay.
McFarland's website also, but it's in
Okay.
Kindle and in paperback at Amazon.
Okay, great, thanks.
Thanks, Dan. That was something that I forgot to mention.
That's okay.
You wanna-
That's all right.
David, long as we've talked about your books, you want to make any other comment about any other book you've written or any book that you might be doing as a future project?
Well, not really. I'm not really working on anything right now. I've always been interested in Dummy Hoy,
Ooh,
the deaf ball player
Yeah.
who is from not too far from where I grew up. I'm
Okay.
having trouble deciding how to make a full-length book out of it, though. So,
well, David, I need to brag a little bit.
okay.
Can you see this?
Yes, I do.
I just purchased this last week. It's called The Signal Season of Dummy Hoy.
Is that a children's book?
Well, it's a play.
Oh, it's a play.
It's a script written by Alan Meyer and Michael Nowak. And I believe it was, it's a comedy in 2 acts, copyrighted in 1986.
Oh,
So I'm happy
have
to
to look
hear
at
that you're going to be writing about Dummy Hoy.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you. I'll have to look that up.
Okay, thank you, David, and everyone else. Enjoy your Saturday morning and weekend. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks a
Bye-bye.
lot, Dave.
Sure.
Thanks,
See you
guys.
later.
Okay, thanks, Blake. All right,
Bye-bye.
bye-bye.